Hello, and welcome to today's class on understanding geography with diagram. Today we'll be talking about the theories on population, and on this basis we'll talk about the theories that has been proposed by Malthus, Marx, and as well as last but not the least is your optimum population theory. Now before beginning, let us understand what does population means. This is a simple definition that I have found over the net. Now, organisms belonging to the same group or species who live in a particular geographical area and are capable of interbreeding. Simple. Organisms living in a particular geographical area and which are capable of interbreeding. Now, let us start. The first theory is that given by the Malthus. Now, Thomas Robert Malthus propounded his population theory in his essay, The Principle of Population. Now, this statement is very important and this should be your first introductory statement. Now, we will understand the entire Malthus theory with the help of this particular diagram. See, what I want you to do is that just after writing the definition, just draw this diagram, and with the help of this diagram, you would be able to explain this flawlessly without missing any point. Now let us understand. Malthus first said that the population increases in a geometric progression. Why? Reproduction hence leads to your increase in your population, and he says that this population will increase in a geometric progression exponentially every 25 years. How do I explain this? If this is 1, that is 1 crore, then after 25 years it will be 2, then after 25 years it will be 4, means it will keep on doubling itself within a constant time period of 25 years. It is simple. Please, you do not need to explain this, just write the statement. Next, food resource will increase in the arithmetic progression, means the food resources, the limit at which the food resources will increase is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the simple explanation. I'm not going to explain you the geometric progression or arithmetic progression, as this is completely a mathematical terms, and we will just stick to the logic behind it. It says that, so basically what it wants to say is that the population would be more when compared to the food resources. The growth of the food resources will be slow, but the growth in the population would be high. If this is a, I'll just help you now, just look into it. This is your basically a bar graph. In this bar graph you can see this is the population and this is your food. In this you can see the population is increasing at a higher rate when compared to your rate at which the food is increasing. Now, if the population is increasing at a higher rate when compared to the food, then this will result in your imbalance. This imbalance will result in what? Overpopulation, and this overpopulation will be corrected by preventive checks. What is this preventive check? Such as the late marriage, moral restraint, abortion, and by the positive checks. What are these positive checks? Famine, flood, etc. I hope you got the difference between the preventive checks and the positive checks. Preventive checks are basically nothing but those checks that are induced by the man, and positive checks are nothing but those checks that are induced by the nature. Now, let us understand this. Malthus, what he did that he emphasized on two universal law regulating the human existence. Law number 1, the need for food, and law number 2, the passion between the sexes. It was the second which led people to marry at a relatively early age. That is, people passion for sex actually led them to marry at an early age, and this results in such a large number of birth. Then the population would double itself in a few years if unchecked by misery and vice. Next, it means that the population will keep on doubling itself until and unless it has been checked by misery. Misery means poverty. Vice means anything that helps in that actually reduces your population. Next, he explicitly mentions of the preventive checks. What are these preventive checks? Preventive checks are those checks which are regulated by your human population, like delay in the marriage, moral restraint. Moral restraint means that people, when they differ having sex, and abortion. Obviously, most of you would know the meaning of abortion. Next, as per Malthus, without such restraint, the world would face widespread hunger, poverty, and misery. It's simple. Overpopulation will lead to your widespread hunger, poverty, and misery. Next, again that I am saying you, the rate of, this is my notes, the rate of increase of such uncontrolled population have been recognized to be geometric, as we have discussed earlier, compared to the rate of increase of the resource base, which is arithmetic. It is this difference that it is this difference in the rate that in the due course of time will generate demand supply mismatch, and this will lead to haves and have nots. See, understand this. Population rises, resource mismatch. As a result, it will develop your haves and have nots. Who are these haves? Those who have resources. Just as the, I can simply say this is the rich and the poor. The rich are called haves and the poor are called the have nots. And moreover, and this will generate the demand supply mismatch and will create such magnitude of deprivation that nature induced the positive checks comes into effectivity. Again, what are those positive checks? Like we had discussed earlier, it could be flood, it could be famine, drought, or the epidemic. This is basically the bar graph that I had explained earlier. Next, it is now it is in this effect of the positive check that the nature rebalances the population and resource base. Hence, what happens during the drought or an epidemic? Basically, in the drought and epidemic, what happens is that most population are not able to survive, hence the population reduces. Now, how, let us analyze this Malthus theory, that what is the positive point of Malthus theory and what is the negative points of Malthus theory. Positive points, it is simple. Yes, Malthus theory is quite simple. It says that overpopulation means it will lead to the positive checks such as your drought, floods, and as a result of which there would be a balance between the population and the resource base. So this is simple and descriptive approach was easy to understand. Next, Malthus population theory initiated the model theory building of geography. See, prior to see, this Malthus theory is nothing but a model. What model? The model simply says that if there is a rise in population, what will happen? There would be overpopulation, there would be mismatch in the resources, and this mismatch in the resources will lead to the positive checks. Now he says he made this as a model. I hope you can understand the model that that we had discussed in that flowchart. And that model began with the help, and that model was the initiation and the, or we can say, was also one of the part of the quantitative revolution. We will study about the quantitative revolution in the coming class, but I just want you to know this. Next, it projected the urgency to control population. Obviously, Malthus theory obviously states that if you do not control the population, then your resources will be depleted. Last but not least, Malthus theory was practically valid on the context that most anti-natalist population policy. What is this? This is called anti-natalist. What is anti-natalist? It means that those countries or those population policies which are against the population rise, that is called anti-natalist. Pro-natalist means they are in favor of population rise. Please have a conceptual clarity of this concept. Next, that the anti-natalist population policy involved delay in the legal marriage age. What does this thing means? It simply means that look at India, look at China, look at the other African countries which have a high population. Now, in order to reduce the population, one of the common thing or one of the common action that they take is they increase the marriage age, or they basically delay the age in which the marriage can take place. In India, the marriage is 18. Prior to that, this was enacted in the 1923, but prior to that, the marriage was that child marriage actually used to prevail. And one of the major reasons why the population was so high was because of the child marriage, which still exists in India. Next, again, sir, but Malthus theory was not that perfect. It had certain negativity within it. What was this negativity, or what you can say, what were the loopholes? First of all, Malthus theory is empirically wrong. Malthus theory that the population would double itself every 25 years has been proved incorrect. See, Malthus said that every 25 years the population would double itself, but this is not the situation. We have come up to this age and the population has not doubled itself. given the condition that many countries have adopted this preventive checks very successfully. Next, from the technological viewpoint, see, Malthus, now we'll just first read the statement, then I'll explain. See, from the technological viewpoint, every exponential population growth, or we can say that simply, you can say that population growth has been simultaneous to the technological innovation in the medical and agricultural field, which could sustain large population by termination of death due to health or starvation related issue. Simple thing. See, we have evolved technologically. This is I would say that the technology of the Green Revolution, as a result of which India started bumper production of the crops. Hence, death that were related to hunger was quite minimized. Similarly, India's medical facilities started developing. Hence, death that were due to this epidemic also reduces. For example, India had been able to successfully eradicate your smallpox. Next, sociologically, the theory was criticized not because it, first of all, it ignored the biological limit of fertility. Now, what does this word fertility means? Now, fertility is nothing but the reproductive capacity of the women. Now, women have a reproductive capacity. What I mean to say is that there is up to a certain age that they can reproduce, and beyond that they cannot reproduce. And Malthus never took that theory into context. Malthus said that women will keep on producing. Now, that doesn't happen. This is number one. Number two, again, Malthus generalized the biological need of having sex. Now, Malthus said that humans, as in general, there is a biological need of having sex. Means they are born to have such sex, and that it is because of that demand it will lead to rise in population. Again, this theory was wrong because this is highly generalized. The people who have lived without success, that so because, and this context you cannot generalize such a thing. Next, sociological need of giving birth to a child. Again, he generalized this, that people will have sex and people will give birth. Now, sometimes people even having sex, they cannot give birth. This is also something that we realize. Now, this something that Malthus said, that all over the world people will have sex and people will keep on giving birth. Now, this are something that Malthus highly generalized it. Thanks. Next, again, Malthus overemphasized on your positive checks. Again, what does this positive checks? I have already given you the example: flood, drought, epidemics, and this what he said, that this positive checks will actually help in reducing the population. But now let's see. In India, 2004 we had your tsunami. Again, let's see in India. Let's talk about Odisha. In Odisha, what happened in 1999? We had our super cyclone. Now, but this super cyclone, we had a mortality of 10,000. 10,000 people died. The fatality rate was 10,000. But now, did it considerably affect the population of Odisha? Or let us say, in the bigger context, did it considerably affect the population of India? No. 10,000 people when compared to 120 crore people, there is no match at all. So he says that positive checks were not that effective that you say. Rather, what was more effective was the preventive checks, like the contraceptives, family planning program. This were more effective in controlling the population when compared to the positive checks. Again, on the economic front, he was criticized by Karl Marx. Obviously, most of us know that who Karl Marx is, father of the communist, father of the theory of the communism. Now, Karl Marx, what he did, that he discarded the conclusion drawn in this theory that growth of population leads to the division of the society. He emphasized that the divided society leads to the increase in population. He said, basically, he says that in the society there is high level of inequality. For example, let's take off the capitalist economy. In this capitalist economy, basically you'll find two category of people: highly rich and very poor. He says that it is this very poor people that exist within the society, and that is the difference, that is the difference between the rich and the poor. That is, the poor do not have all the facilities that the rich have. Hence, the poor multiply their population so as to gain more resources. We will, when we read about the Marx theory, will come to know about it in more details. Next, there is an absence of causal relationship between the positive checks and overpopulation. As per Malthus, positive checks like natural calamities such as the earthquake, tsunami, etc. occur because of overpopulation. See, first of all, we know that ki Malthus overemphasized on positive checks, and he means though he mentions about the preventive check, but he overemphasized on the positive checks because he says that if population will grow, then positive checks will come into effect. Again, one of the biggest mistakes that Malthus did was that there was no causal relationship between positive checks and the overpopulation, because natural calamities have occurred, because he says that it is because of the overpopulation natural calamity occurs. Now let us say recently we witnessed the cyclone Amphan. Now cyclone Amphan was not because that India has 120 crores population. Now cyclone Amphan arose because there was low pressure that arose in the Bay of Bengal. It is simple. Now Malthus, what he said that ki, if there is overpopulation, there would be a positive. That would be the induction of the positive checks. Now again, this theory was wrong. Again, Malthus' theory was one-sided. Why it was one-sided? He emphasized on the birth rate and ignored the decline in the death rate. See, what happened is that ki, population. How does the population rises? Population rises when the birth rate increases, but also remember that population rises when the death rate decreases. Now Malthus completely ignored that. Malthus said that ki, it's because population is rising because there are more number of births. Malthus completely ignored that population is rising not just because of the birth rate but because of the decline in death rate. It is so simple. Hence Malthus, what he did, that he completely ignored this death rate. I hope you got a clarity of the 7 points regarding that what were the drawbacks of the Malthusian theory. Now let's come to the Marxian concept. Now Marxian concept was introduced by none other than your Karl Marx. Karl Marx, he retaliated to the Malthusian demographic theory, outlined few of the conclusion on the population referred to as the Marxian concept of demography. See, first number one point is that the Marx identified that it is not the growth of population but the evils of capitalism. Marx directly attacked capitalism that makes the society divided into the rich and the poor. But Malthus said that if the population increases, then there would be rich and the poor. But Marx said that it is in the capitalistic society that exists a rich and a poor. How? See, the rich are the owner of the means of production, and therefore not just they control the entire production mechanism and process, but also completely acquire the positive difference between the input cost and the sales realization. I would explain this phrase as that they have the entire profit is kept by whom? The entire profit of this is kept by your capitalists or the owner of the manufacturing. He keeps the entire profit. You can simply say that the entire profit goes into the pocket of your capitalist. But on the other hand, what happens with the poor? That the poor, what happens is that it says over here is that moreover, due to the capitalistic setup functioning, rich also saves on the labor wages. What is the saving of the labor wages? Means labor, they do not give the wage that the labor actually deserves. Rather, the labor that the particular laborer is given less than the wage that he deserves. Next, it is therefore that the limited rich population keeps on multiplying the assets, that is money, they possess in comparison to the poor who represent the workforce in the production process are not just being, it says that they are not just being subjected to long working hours but are also deprived of the basic wages. Simply understand this, that Marx said that that capitalists, what they did was that they captured all the resources and they kept that resources in the pocket. On the other hand, they exploited the labor. How? First of all, they had a long working hour, number one, and number two was that they were not given the basic wages or they were deprived of the basic wages, hence making them live in the absolute poverty. And it is in this condition that to multiply the assets by whom? By the poor. They have the basically, they develop the perception that we can multiply the assets only when we have more number of people working for, and as a result of this, there is the that the population which that the population which is poor, which is deprived of resources, they have more number of children when compared to the population that have more resources. Now this is completely, we can see that in our India's urban rural setup. We have already seen these things. Next. Hence, Marx, what he said that he advocated that such thing can be controlled by setting up a more fair, equitable economic and societal setup. But again, Marx theory had certain criticisms. What were those criticisms? See, Marx said that the unprecedented growth of population is not only due to unemployment or underemployment, but also mainly due to the extension of in medical amenities and healthcare services. See, population grows not population is growing. See, Marx side said that the population growth is basically because of the capitalists, but no, population also grew because that the death rates declined because of the medical technologies, healthcare services that developed. This thing was ignored by whom? Malthus, and this was also ignored by Marx. Next, increase in the population does not automatically leads to decline in the wage. Marx says that if the population increases, the wage will decline. But this is not the thing. There are other socio-political and economic factors. Now look at this. See, if you have see, let us say a software engineer who is well educated will get better opportunities of job than compared to a laborer who has not that well educated. Well, means a laborer, let's see, he never got a chance to go into the university. Now understand this concept. So obviously what we can see is that apart from the population there are other factors like education, number one, factors like affording the education, means whether you have the resources to afford the education. So basically marx Marx theory was one-sided. He just compared the population with the wage. Next, again Marx says that there is an indirect relationship between the wage and the low birth rate. What does he say? Means greater the wages, lesser would be the birth. Lesser the wage, greater would be the birth. Now again this is completely unjustified, and that Marx completely ignored this religion and faith. Yes, religion and faith are also one of the determiners of your birth rates. Next, Marx overemphasized on considering the private property as the main cause of evil, which leads to the poverty, misery, unemployment, and fast growth of population. The social norms of education level, technological advancement, attitude towards the family, all are vital determinants of the population growth. Hence, Marx ignored them. Last but not least, Marx's theory on the population growth may be relevant in the capitalistic society and in all probability would not operate in the feudalistic, socialistic and primitive hunting and food gathering society. Please understand this. See, Marx says that Marx theory was based that if there is existence of capitalism, then there would be existence of such population growth, that there would be high population growth. But this is not the context. This context, again, we cannot apply this context in case of the authoritarian regime such as in the North Korea led by Kim Jong Un, or we cannot have such kind of a condition amongst the Juang tribes. The Juang are the PVTGs of Odisha, or we cannot have such kind of a condition amongst the Shompe or the Jarwas. Next, there is a again there was a demographer, Dumont, and what did Dumont believe that in the prevalence of the social capillarity, when the need of the smaller families would be generated by the desire to better level of economic status. See, simply you can cut the statement and say that as per Dumont, that the need of the smaller family would be generated by the desire to the better economic status. See, Dumont says that later on, or the simultaneous, that the people will understand that we can generate more money when we have less population rather than more population. That is, if a family has one member, then the one member would be given more resources when compared to the family having two member, because the resources completely will be divided. This is what Dumont says. So basically we can say that as per Dumont, Dumont says that that the need of a smaller family would be generated by the desire to have a better economic status. Simple. So with this, we got a clarity of understanding of the difference between your Malthus as well as Marxian theory. I will end with this and I will come up with the optimum population in another video. Thank you.